I've never had this thought before in my climbing career, but I've finally started to think, oh my gosh, what if I've climbed my hardest boulder?
Hey y'all, welcome back to The Struggle. How you doing? It's me, Ryan. I'm your host. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling a little bit jet lagged, or maybe I'm crack lagged. Maybe that's the better term for what I'm feeling right now. I just got back home a few hours ago from a whirlwind trip out west where I was doing a bunch of crack and off with climbing with our friends and former guests of the show, Tom Randall and Anna Hazelnut, in Moab and also in Vegas, respectively. And oh my gosh, did I have the absolute best time. I'm going to talk more about that in a future Plog episode for patrons and subscribers, but I'll talk a little bit more about it here in just a second. So anyway, I'm dragging, but for the best reasons, and also the holidays are upon us, and that's always a little bit draining, right? Like emotionally and physically, and so it's all on us. I hope you are taking care of yourself right now with all of this good and fun and also crazy and stressful stuff that goes on towards the end of the year. And as this is the end of the year, we've got a great episode today. I'm really excited to have Davis Ngo, or Dr.Climb, back on the show. Y'all might remember, if you're going into the deep cuts here, where Davis surprised Anna on one of our crag chats. So he came in as Anna's only fan, 42069, I think was his screen name, and he came in. We just had a great time. It was just like a fun and silly time in that crag chat. But I've been excited to talk to Davis one-on-one for a long time now. I love the content that he puts out there. His climbing journey has been really interesting as I've followed that now over the years. And, you know, we connected. I had this idea in my mind when we connected of wanting to kind of wrap up 2024 with this look at climbing and community and positivity. And I don't know, I kind of had a little bit of an agenda going into the conversation, to be perfectly honest. And as these things tend to happen when I have an agenda, it got totally blown up because Davis, he's actually been struggling lately, and he was very open about his struggles that he's been experiencing. You know, big life events have been happening for him. He quit his job. He's a doctor of physical therapy, and he quit that job and kind of achieved the dream of becoming a full-time climber and content creator. But we talk about kind of the pros and cons of that. Like, what happens when the dream comes true and maybe it's not everything that you thought it would be. And, you know, I just found so much of this conversation to be really relatable because we as humans are not one note. We are not just like happy or sad or down or whatever. We're just very, very layered. Davis has struggled with injuries. He's questioning whether he's going to be able to get back and climb as strong as he did pre-injury. He's wondering what this next year is going to hold for him. And I'm kind of going through a little bit of that questioning myself right now, having finished up the big project, feeling a little bit aimless right now in my climbing, my training, and wondering if I can continue to push myself in all of these ways that I want to. And maybe you're experiencing something like this right now as well, or if you're not, then you certainly will, because climbing is a long sport, it's a long game, and we have our ups and downs on it. And Davis opened up about all of those today in this conversation, and I'm really grateful that he did. And maybe we'll just get into it right now. I'll give a little recap on my Moab and Vegas trips at the end here. But let's go ahead and just jump right into this very open and vulnerable conversation about all things climbing, progress, and community with Dr. Climb, Davis Ngo. I'm really happy to see you. It's been a little bit since you were our surprise guest on a crag chat with Anna and Ryan. Let's catch up for a minute, you know, before we kind of dive into the topic at hand, which is a very nebulous topic, just really kind of a bit of a retrospective and a look at climbing just as climbing, which I've got some questions and some thoughts, and I had some people sending questions as well. I think we can kind of let it wander, but it's been some time. I've been following along. It looks like you've had some ups and some downs and some really beautiful time in nature.
Yeah.
How are you?
Overall, I'm good. So the big sort of update is that I am sort of going through a transitionary period with my career. So I quit my job several months ago
Yeah.
and have just been focusing on climbing and just thinking about what I want to do next, basically. And that's been great. It's like you said, it's come with its ups and downs. I think my brain is finally starting to like feel like I need to do something.
Right.
Not that I'm not doing anything, like I'm traveling and I'm climbing and stuff, but I feel like I need to quote unquote do something productive now. And I'm racking my brain to figure out what my next steps are.
Interesting. The dream for many of us, myself included, and probably a lot of people listening, the dream kind of is to quit the job and go climbing. But then when it happens, it maybe brings in all sorts of different emotions or thoughts or realities that the glossy dream of just like being a climber and following the condies and all of that, maybe there's more to it than that. So,
Totally.
What has the experience been like since taking that leap?
Like I said, overall it's been good. My only complaint is that I might have a little bit too much idle time, which is a great thing compared to what was happening before, where I was just kind of burning myself out. But a little too much idle time is awesome. I'm watching a lot of TV and like binging shows that I don't get to binge when I'm working.
Yes. You are living my fantasy right now. Like I haven't had idle time in 15 years, so I'll try to withhold my jealous rage right now hearing about your TV watching. But I have experienced that. I've experienced that side of things where I start to get antsy and I'm like, ooh, I need to create something. I need to do something. I'm like, what am I, like it just, I don't know. If you relax too much, then that can be uncomfortable as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I feel like my brain is rotting a little bit and I need to do something to it. I think the biggest thing that I've learned is, I kind of tailored this time off around climbing, right? And the biggest thing I've learned is that you can't climb 24/7, especially if you're in a training cycle. I'm really trying to get back into what I think is good shape for me right now. And so I'm spending a lot of time in the gym.
Okay, so a little bit of idle time, but that's good. But you're saying you can't climb 24/7, especially when you're training hard. And that makes sense. Like otherwise you're just going to probably get injured or wreck yourself. So you have to find something to do to keep you from training.
Yeah, exactly. And the other part of it is I kind of explicitly am taking this time to take a break. And so not only am I not working as a physical therapist, for your listeners, I'm a physical therapist by trade. I'm not working in the hospital anymore. I'm also not doing any like real social media, like ad work and stuff like that. I'm not doing any of that anymore either, which is really great. And like I said, now I'm going crazy a little bit.
This is probably a good place for us to dive in earnest to this conversation because we're wrapping up 2024. We're looking towards 2025. And I kind of wanted to, this has been, in terms of like the struggle, I focused heavily this year on performance for my own goals, my own training, but also a lot of the coaches and the athletes that I've spoken with have, it's been a heavy focus on performance, which I love. I think climbers love to just geek out over training and performance. But one of the biggest things that I'm taking away as I reflect on this past year are like the motivations and the benefits that climbing brings beyond just trying to hit that next grade, And I'm excited to explore this with you because I see the joy in you as a climber, but I also see like the full authentic experience, the ups and the downs and anxiety and stress and depression and joy and laughter and silliness and shenanigans and trying hard and sending. And it's the whole package. And I think for myself, who's a weekend warrior, and a lot of people who are listening, that's our experience as well. And at the end of the day, whether we're driven to do the hardest thing we've ever done or we're just like messing around with friends, it's really about joy and about, just having something to get excited about and do and connect over. And so as we enter into this, I'd love to hear from you, why climbing, Davis? Like what is it about climbing specifically as opposed to mountain biking or trail running or video games or whatever? Like what is it about climbing that has drawn you to this activity, this sport, this lifestyle?
Oh gosh. It's such a big question.
I know it. Got to come out swinging.
Yeah. What is it about climbing? Oh man. I knew, oh, I'm in like an emotional place in my life right now, by the way. So this conversation might get a little bit emotional.
That's fine. That's great.
I need to start by letting you know kind of where I'm at right now with climbing,
Sure.
because I think you're catching me at a really interesting time in my personal climbing career, which I sort of hope that your listeners can relate to it, particularly climbers that have gone through kind of a lot of ups and downs in their climbing it might apply to. But yeah, right now I honestly feel like I have the worst relationship with my climbing that I've ever had right now.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a very interesting experience for me. I've been climbing for 13, maybe 14 years now, and I've never had a period in my climbing that has been this long that I've been feeling so negative about it, which is crazy. And it's kind of hard to admit, to be honest, because it's just kind of hard to admit.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for sharing it. I'm really interested in exploring this if you're willing to, because
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Those of us, that have been climbing for a while, we have a deep relationship with it, and it's not always like the most psyched, right? And when you talk about this, challenged relationship with it right now, what is it about that?
I've done a lot of reflecting about this over the past few months, especially because that's really all that I have time to do. I'm just like
Right.
constantly in my head about it. But yeah, just right now, climbing, my personal climbing and the goals that I have, just everything feels really heavy. And I'm not entirely sure why. Just a little history that a lot of people that are following me would know. I've been climbing for 13 years. I've gone to a relatively high level for somebody that's been climbing for that long. I climbed my hardest boulder like 2 years ago. And then about a year ago, I went through a string of pretty serious injuries. I popped my pulley, I had a really bad ankle sprain, and then I broke my back at the end of last year.
Yeah.
And then after that, I just kind of went through this phase of just like trying to claw myself back into shape. Is the words that kind of go around in my head. I'm just kind of desperately trying to get back into what I think is good shape. And I'm not there. I don't feel like I'm even close to what I feel like is good shape for me, which has been really hard because there's something about having this like really high expectation of yourself and your body just not being able to perform at that level of expectation that just feels particularly upsetting. I've been climbing for a long time. I've experienced ups and downs for sure. Like it's not like, gradual uphill or anything. It's like, I know that my climbing comes in waves, but for some reason this time everything feels heavier. It feels like things are taking longer than they should, even though if I were like talking to somebody else, I would be like, well, what do you mean should? Like that doesn't mean anything,
Right.
Things are taking longer than they should. I feel old now. I'm not old, I'm 32, but at the same time, it does feel like my body is taking longer to heal than it has in the past. It's taking long to recover from hard sessions. And kind of like for the first time in my life, I've started to think, I've never had to stop before in my climbing career, but I've finally started to think, oh my gosh, what if I've climbed my hardest boulder? Like, and that's it's just a lot to wrap my head around. Like, what if I'm going through this hard training and my body's just like, no, and just pops a pulley again, And yeah, as you can probably tell, my mind is just spinning and spinning.
No, this is what we're here to do, is just to talk. And I can see that it's a fresh wound, if you will, like these emotions and these thoughts that you're trying to process and sharing like kind of in real time. Yeah, it's so interesting how tough we are on ourselves because, as you said, if you were coaching yourself or talking and somebody else was saying this to you, you would probably have a little bit of tough love words and say, hey, you're not really being fair to yourself here. At 32, I mean, most athletes peak in their mid-30s, and climbers oftentimes peak, beyond that, later than that. And so the reality is that it's very unlikely that you've climbed your hardest boulder, but I can understand that doesn't change the reality that you're sitting in right now, which is kind of wrestling with these ideas of like, oh, have I peaked? Has my performance peaked? Or at least in the style that you're talking about, because there's a lot of different disciplines of climbing. Your trad performance or your sport performance or a style of bouldering, slab bouldering, whatever. There's a million different ways to kind of create goals for ourselves that we can achieve in various stages of our career. But I do hear what you're saying. And a lot of how we value ourselves as climbers and just kind of position ourselves within the climbing community is on performance and maybe a V grade or a number grade for a sport route or something. And so those are some thoughts that are right now kind of manifesting as climbing thoughts, but they sound like bigger life thoughts to me. It's not like, oh, have I climbed my hardest grade? It's like, oh, am I getting old? Am I like, that's like the life thing, right? Am I getting old? And I'm 45, so I'm on a further side of this internal exploration than you are.
You're 45? Is that what you just said?
Yeah, I'm 45.
Whoa. I didn't. Whoa. Wow. I would have never guessed.
It's the pajamas that throw it off. See, I'm perennially a child, and that's what keeps me young.
Yeah, you have such a youthful. I mean, okay. I will say 45 is not old, by the way, but you have a very youthful spirit to you. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you.
Also, you just climbed. Congrats on 513, right?
Yeah, my hardest thing ever, Davis. That's what I'm saying. At 45, my hardest thing ever, 513.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thanks, dude. Yeah, I'm really psyched. And I've been climbing for about 15 years now myself. I started climbing when I was 30. So my experience is, of course, different than yours and different than everybody else that's listening, unless they're exactly the same person as me. But yeah, we all have a different relationship with performance and climbing. And for the most of my climbing life, I was just like wanting to go out into nature and start at the bottom of something and get to the top of something. And so it was a lot of trad, multi-pitch, just being out somewhere for 12 hours and just taking it in. But I'm at a season in life where with the kids and all that, it's easier to just go do like a day at the crag and not do like some big epic trip. And so I got really psyched on performance, and I set this goal of 513 and I achieved it. And I was like, that actually wasn't that hard. And so I'm just going to set a harder goal and see where it goes. So
that's amazing. Yeah. Congrats. That's so cool.
Dude. You're gonna be V double digits when you're in your 40s and 50s. Believe me, it's a funny thing. Age is a funny thing. Like it's obviously it impacts all of us differently, but climbing is a sport that very greatly rewards skill more so than just brute strength. So I'm not worried about you, but I can see that you are experiencing this. You're going through some existential shit right now, and
yeah, totally.
That's pretty real.
It's so strange because it's like it's definitely the first time in 13 years that I've felt this way, and for the most part, I'll go through my ups and downs, but I would say relatively quickly, like go back to the joy experience of climbing. And, climbing is generally the most positive thing in my life. And right now it's like one of the more negative things. But even that being said, like I still love it, which is interesting.
Yeah, that says a lot about your relationship with it, which is like it can be the hardest thing, but still you love it. And that's how you know you love something, is like when it's hard, when it's not easy, when it's hard and you still love it. And I think that's like the strong indicator. I mean, that's like people in our lives, family, those are the relationships that stick around, is like, you still take care of them even when they're hard, because you know that there's that deep love and appreciation there, and the better days are to come.
That was deep as hell.
I'm 4 eggnogs into the day here. All the pontificating will be coming out. This episode's supported by Crimped, and I want to talk about how I'm using Crimped and Crimped Plus to program my training. So I've been using Crimped for many, many years, long before there was a podcast. In fact, I attribute going from 510 to 12A in about a year by getting disciplined and serious with my training and using Crimped to keep me on track. So when I was doing that, I was using their preloaded climbing plans. They've got like 75 different workouts created by world-class coaches and climbers right there in the app, and you can just load it. Like, oh, I want sport fitness, boom, it goes in there. In fact, there's a playlist now that I created for developing sport climbing fitness. So you can just go down there and select that and it'll like load right in there for you. But now what I'm doing more often is actually getting really specialized, and I'm using Crimped Plus to program my own training very specifically week after week. And I am far more consistent with my training when I've got things programmed in Crimped. There's like a gamification element to the training. So at the end of each week, you're really motivated to close out those bars. It feels really good. I'm super busy with work and the family and all of that, but when I have my workouts programmed right there in Crimped, I just get them done. You can swing over to thestruggleclimbingshow.com/crimped to try it for free and take your climbing to new heights. Let me know how it goes. This episode is supported by SCARPA, and while it's true that I'm totally obsessed with their climbing shoes and have been climbing in SCARPAs for over a decade, I just want to talk for a second about their ridiculously awesome trail runners and overall just their running shoes and their approach shoes. They're so comfortable and they're so well made, and if you do any running at all, look, I am not a professional runner. I wouldn't even consider myself much of a weekend warrior runner, but I've been trying to work some like generalized cardio into my routine a little bit here, and so I'm taking some trail runs about once a week. And the Golden Gate ATRs by SCARPA are the absolute comfiest shoes I have ever run in my life. I usually get knee problems and back problems when I run. This is SCARPA's most cushioned shoe that they've ever made to date. And you can tell, I mean, it's like running on a cloud. And then there's just enough like all-terrain grip on those where I can go from the road to the trails seamlessly. If you're into like running at all or just comfy shoes, try out the Golden Gates, but also check out SCARPA for their approach shoes. I've got the Crux, I've got the Geckos. They're all really fantastic, incredibly well made. This company's been around since 1938. I love them so much. They support the show here, and you can support them and your climbing and trail running goals by swinging over to thestruggleclimbingshow.com/SCARPA. I'm curious about the injuries because I've had some injuries, but they haven't been big, and especially breaking your back on the high ball. And I think a lot of people who are listening have probably seen that video and heard about it. It was pretty traumatic, no doubt. Just like acutely traumatic in the moment and like physically, but also mentally. And so you mentioned that you don't feel like you're kind of quote unquote where you should be in terms of like your physical fitness, but you're also coming back from, you know, a really pretty heinous injury or string of injuries, as you noted. And Are you trying to, whether it's fair or unfair, are you measuring yourself against like pre-injury Davis? Are you looking back a couple years or a few years and saying, this is what I want to get back to? Or are you trying to get to a level of fitness and performance that's true to who you are today as opposed to who you were a few years ago?
Oh, wow. So I'm definitely falling into the trap of comparing myself to my old self. It is like I'm looking like a couple years back thing. And the mind games that I'm playing with myself are, again, so interesting. I would never like not allow, but for lack of a better word, I'm going to use the word allow. I would never allow a friend to do this to themselves, you know,
right?
To talk to themselves this way. But yeah, I'm looking at, you know, videos and stuff like that of the climber that I was a couple years ago. So before I broke my back. But not only that, I think what I'm doing is like, I think about breaking my back and the injuries that followed and the healing process and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, it was a year ago. I was like, it feels like so long ago. It feels like I should be back by now, you know? And
it's only a year ago. You broke your back only a year ago.
Yeah, even as you say that, I'm like, well, Ryan, it was a whole year ago. Like, I should be back by now. Like,
fucking crazy.
Yeah,
but you know, we're our own toughest critics. And it sounds to me, and I've also, by the way, I've seen you climbing recently, and you've been doing like hard stuff on a board. I mean, it's all relative. You don't feel like it's hard. For me, there are problems that I can't climb. Maybe I'll never be able to climb. I'm not particularly strong boulder. That's like the understatement of the world. I am like a very weak boulderer and certainly board climber. And so like, I see what you're doing. I'm like, God, Davis is just out there crushing it. But you're a tough critic on yourself. And you're saying, oh, I'm not where I want to be, which I totally get. Like, where do you want to be? Let's like just play the let's just go down this rabbit hole for a second. Like, what performance metric, or how would you measure kind of a satisfactory place that you would be in terms of your climbing? And then let's talk about like the dream, like where do you want to be?
So anything that I do, I'm training for projects outside. That's the thing that I'm always the most focused on. And I tend to be, essentially I have projects in Bishop that I want to finish. I should say need, that I need to finish. For my ego, I desperately need to.
Classic climber mentality. It's fine.
Yeah. I have projects in Bishop that I'm training for. And just like a little side note, if I were coaching somebody, and they gave me a goal of like, I just want to climb X V grade, I would say, well, some people have really bad goals.
Right.
And climbing a V grade or climbing, a 5-point grade or whatever is just not a good enough goal, because you don't really know what you're training for. Because you could climb like a V6 slab, or you can climb a V6 overhang, or you can climb a V6 sloper problem, or, so just as a little side note, I think that if you're training at all, I think you should be training towards a very specific climb, personally.
And so that's what you're doing right now, is you're training for a, or maybe multiple specific climbs out in Bishop, and that's what you're building all of your training around.
Yeah. And I think to answer your question, like maybe more specifically without giving up what my goals are, I think there's like a feeling as well of climbing well that I'm also trying to get back to. Like I've like tasted this like when my body is moving really well, when it's flowing up the wall, but I feel kind of close to there right now.
How much do you think that feeling, the attaining it or not attaining it, is your physical fitness versus your mental game?
God, wow, that is a great question. I think it's, one, something I'm trying to figure out for myself right now. And two, I think it's probably like equal parts. And yeah, that's a great question. Holy moly.
Well, I think that it's a question that I'm constantly asking myself too, because there's just something so intangible about confidence in one's ability, and oftentimes physical preparedness is what leads to confidence in one's ability, but not always, right? And sometimes you can be just like so fit and so strong, but the mental game's not where it needs to be. For me, it might be like a fear of falling, because that's been something that's been a big struggle for me in climbing, or just a belief that I could do it. I think one of the biggest differences between me setting my project first go this season versus not getting it last season was like, there was like a little bit of a lightness and just kind of a confidence and a belief and just like kind of a release of pressure. And I just, moseyed my way up the route, and that was really nice. But towards the end of the year, I was like, oh, my days are numbered, and this might be my last good weather window, and I really I got to do it now. It's kind of getting back to the need thing, right? Like, oh, I need to do it now. And you might as well have just hung like a 25-pound plate around my waist at that point. Like, I just wasn't going to make it to the top once I put all that pressure on myself. But the one does, connect to the other. I remember talking to Peter Croft, and he told me a story about how John Backer would do 50 finger, like half pad fingertip pull-ups. And he said, there's no route that would require that, but I just want to know that I can do it. And that lets me know that I can do it. I can do any climb out here. And so there's just it's kind of inextricably linked. Like, physical preparedness tends to influence the mental game, but mental game tends to influence one's ability to go hard preparing physically. And so it sounds like, as you said, it's a 50-50 split. Maybe you're working on both, but I'm curious how you're working on both.
Yeah, it's totally like a chicken before the egg thing, huh? And I think something that I'm coming to realize in the past few months, because I've been spending a lot more time alone as well, because my schedule is kind of like all over the place.
Like training alone, you mean? Like going to the gym alone?
Yeah, going to the gym alone. I'm also spending a lot more time outdoors alone as well, just because my schedule is a lot more free and all over the place. So I'm like trying to avoid peak hours at places and stuff like that. But probably the biggest lesson that I've learned during this time is that and this is a lesson I learned over and over again with climbing, is that I genuinely climb the best always when I'm having the most fun. And that involves climbing with people. And
Right.
like, that's definitely the thing that I'm actively trying to change right now, is like reach out to more people, or like just meet more people in the gym. Like, despite appearances, I actually tend to be a little bit more on the socially awkward side of things. And so I won't always talk to people in the gym, and I'm kind of like in my own world a lot of the time. And so, especially when I'm in a new like environment and a new like home gym, it'll take me a while. But I did have my first like session with like a group of new friends yesterday, and that was incredibly fun. And I climbed very well. So yeah, that's a big thing that I'm learning recently, is how much like other people matter to me. I know a lot of people like climb really well alone, but that's just not me. And it's just, to go back to the question that you asked 45 minutes ago, I am a climber because of the people and the community, for sure. And I will remain a climber because of the people in the community. And this is going to sound so cheesy, but like, I'm just like stringing all of the things that we've talked about together. Like, let's say this was my hardest boulder, which it probably isn't, but let's say I've climbed my hardest boulder. I'm still going to continue climbing because of the people in the community, and I'm going to keep showing up because I love them so much, Oh my gosh, so cheesy. Jesus.
No, it's not. It's really beautiful. That really resonates with me. I think probably a lot of people listening, and for those of us who live busy, hectic lives, many people do, whether they're students or professionals or parents or whatever it may be, having those gym sessions by yourself sometimes are great. Sometimes you're just like, let me put my blinders on, my head down. Like, I just want to go and like listen to some fucking raging music and like work hard. And I have those days, but the better days are the days at the crag, like with the crew, or the days at the gym with the crew, and cheering and laughing. And oftentimes, to your point, performing better because of that group stoke. I don't know. I feel like it's sometimes having like a crew is like aid, because it can lift you up a route, and it just feels so good. And you tend to, like a lot of the content you create is really based around that, is just like out in nature, hiking, screwing around, carrying a million pads, laughing with people, taking funny videos of them when they're not aware that you're taking a video of them. And so, yeah, that community aspect does seem to be an important part of you as a climber. And you just noted that like there's a new kind of climb group that you're hooking up with. Are you going through a transition in your climbing relationships as well?
I wouldn't say that. Like, it's more so just because I'm moving around. Like, you mean my relationships with other people?
Yeah, like is your crew changing, or maybe it changes because of your location? Yeah.
It's mostly just changing because of my location. Like, I still have a lot of like really good friends that I prefer to climb with, especially in Bishop, but I'm just not living there at the moment. And I'll go through my ups and downs of, feeling very extroverted versus feeling very introverted. And it just so happens that right now I'm in an introverted phase. And so it just feels like a touch harder to like make those friends. But I think it feels like I'm coming out of that right now, which is good.
How has becoming an Instagram celebrity affected your relationship with like climbing in the community?
Oh God, this is a can of worms. I don't know. The quickest and easiest answer is I don't know. That is an interesting can of worms as well. And you're catching me at an interesting time with that, in that I feel very jaded with the Instagram world at the moment. I haven't been posting as much. And the things that I have been posting have been like more for all of the people that followed me for the like comedy. You haven't gotten any of that in the past few months, and I kind of apologize, but the kind of cool part about not making it my job is I can do whatever the heck I want with it. And luckily people seem to appreciate the more quote unquote vulnerable stuff that I post as well. But yeah, I feel a little jaded with Instagram stuff at the moment. I'm not entirely sure why. It's hard to explain. I still like love the community that I've managed to build around it. but I'm just feeling a little bit more private. And in terms of my relationship with climbing, how has it changed it? I would say, if I'm being honest, maybe it makes it a little bit heavier in that I have a bigger audience. There's that like imposter syndrome thing, I think. It's, for example, I was joking around in my own head before I came on this podcast, like, oh, it's kind of funny. I'll go down in history as like the weakest climber that's been on the struggle. Like, there's something about just like having a big internet presence that makes you feel like you need to perform. And, you know, I really appreciated, I listened to, in advance of this interview, I listened to Hannah Morris's interview. Side note, I think that Hannah Morris is my spirit influencer. I think we have like very similar kind of like spirits to us.
She's wonderful. And
Yeah,
very
so
and
cool.
very real, very accessible, you know, very open with her, what she's feeling. You know, again, yes, very similar to this conversation here.
Yeah. And I really appreciated like her perspective on things, and how I think she mentioned that putting this pressure on yourself and like blaming it on other people is just kind of like a cop-out. That wasn't what she said exactly, but it's like, it's actually just a mirror for the own pressure that you put on yourself, you know?
Yeah.
Something like that. And I really appreciated that. That resonated deeply. I was like, oh, like these people, you know, just because I have like X amount of followers, nobody actually gives a shit, like if I'm climbing hard or not, you know?
Right.
And the person that gives a shit is me.
I mean, that's so true.
Yeah.
I often remind myself of that just when I go to the crag. I'm like, or the gym, if I'm just flailing and it's a high gravity day and I'm punting off of things, whatever, you know, you immediately have this thought of, oh, everybody's going to think that I'm a shit climber, or I'm bad, or what, you know, why do I have this podcast or whatever? And the reality is they just don't care. They're only thinking about their climbing and how they're doing,
Yeah.
you know? And it's like, if anything, people only care in as much as they want everybody else to do well, because it's fun when people do well, you know, like it's so
Exactly.
supported, but internally we're always so hard on ourselves for whatever reason.
Yeah, it's so interesting. But otherwise, the social media stuff, it does have that like slight effect. I wouldn't say it's like super negative though. And then I would say for the vast majority of how I feel about this social media stuff is I feel very positively about it. And I feel really grateful to have like built the community that I've built. And it's very strange being like pseudo internet famous in the climbing world. Like I'm still like wrapping my head around it, that people recognize me. Like it happens probably at least once every time I go to any gym anywhere. It's like somebody will like come up to me and I'm like, this is so fucking weird.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like a normal guy, you know?
Yeah.
And I love it. It's great. It's really nice. And everybody's so nice. I had this like guy, his name is Peter. He came up to me when I was climbing in Vancouver, and he opened up about how one of my posts about depression like really resonated with him. And I could kind of tell that it was difficult for him to come up and talk to me, but he did it anyway. And that was probably like one of the lovelier moments that I've had regarding the Instagram stuff. Because sometimes I post that stuff and I'm not really sure. It's really just like a form of expression for me. And it's great that people like it. But sometimes it's just like numbers behind a screen. Like I'm not really sure how people are thinking about it, you know?
Right.
So
Beautiful.
It was great.
This episode is supported by PhysiVantage Nutrition, and I've been using PhysiVantage since long before there was ever even a podcast. I've been a paying customer for many years now. It tastes the best, and it does the best for me and supporting my goals in my training, my recovery, and my performance as a rock climber. I'm sure you all are familiar with their products. Their athlete team is crazy, from Alex Magos to Jonathan Segrist, Amity Worm to Daniel Woods, and so many other crushers out there are using PhysiVantage regularly. And that's because it works. I use their supercharged collagen every day before I train my fingers or I go climbing. I use their vegan Powerplex protein, which tastes incredible. The chocolate flavored protein that PhysiVantage makes is just crazy. That's like my sweet treat that I have at the end of every day. I'll either mix it up with some water or milk, or I'll mix a scoop in with my plain Greek yogurt. And it tastes like chocolate pudding. It is so, so good. And then recently, because I've been trying to build up that endurance for my long, pumpy climbs out here at the Red, I've been using a lot of their Sendurex, which is like a beetroot extract. It's highly concentrated. It is science-backed to help support the endurance system. And I'm feeling like I'm climbing longer and harder and also recovering faster when I'm using PhysiVantage products. So I think you're going to love it too. If you haven't tried it, you can get 15% off your order over at physivantage.com using code STRUGGLE15. If you're looking to level up your training, your recovery, and your performance, I have really felt the difference using this stuff for the past few years. And I think you will too. Check it all out at physivantage.com and use code STRUGGLE15 to get that discount. This episode is supported by Rungni. Y'all know Rungni. It's Magnus Mitbo's company. Oh my gosh, they make incredible stuff, you guys, okay? Chalk, apparel, accessories, chalk bags, chalk buckets. It's all there over on their website. What are my favorites? Okay, well, right now, I'm using their liquid chalk every time I go out and have a session. It's called Mag Juice, first of all. So boom, you've already got my money. But then, it works really, really well. I rub it on my palms, my fingers, and it's like my base layer. I don't then have to chalk up as much when I'm climbing, whether it's a gym session or out at the crag. Less time chalking up means more time actually climbing and hopefully landing moves and not punting off my project. And then the apparel's fantastic. I've got all their super soft sweatshirts and their tees are amazing. But my absolute favorite, I think you guys know this, are their harness pants. They are stretchy, they are durable, they are attractive. I love the cut, I love the feel. They are the best dang pants in the game. And right now you can get 15% off pretty much everything over at Rungni by using code STRUGGLE. And then you can add that on top of their free shipping bundles. So especially if you're listening in the US where you would get hit with shipping, they're giving you free shipping with their free shipping bundles, and you can add code STRUGGLE on top of that. Hit that link in your show notes to stock up on chalk, to get those threads that you've been wanting for your climbing and your lounging, and use code STRUGGLE for 15% off. You say, you perform your best when you're having fun. And so I'm curious, as you look back, and it could be on 2024, or it could be earlier than that, like what stand out as those perfect days?
The perfect day, I'll paint a picture for you. The perfect day is in the Buttermilks in Bishop, California. And the temperature is like maybe 50 to 55 degrees. Maybe like a couple clouds in the sky with a light breeze. So you're like cool in the shade, but like a little warm in the sun. And all the homies are out with their little dogs. And you're just like hopping from boulder to boulder and just joking around with your friends. And notice I haven't said anything about performance.
Right. Yeah.
Usually those are the perfect days. Usually there's like some music bumping. Usually it's like the middle of the week because nobody in Bishop works. And the crag is empty because it's like the middle of the week. And so we bring like some speakers out there and we're just like dancing and goofing around. And yeah, wow, talking about this is making me miss Bishop a lot. But yeah, that would be the perfect day for me.
I can see this. I can see the stoke, just as because you didn't reflect on a specific day that you recall. You're reflecting on just kind of this collection of experiences that wrap up into what is a perfect day. And it's the conditions, and it's the location, and it's the people, and it's the vibe, more so than it's the performance. And performance drives us. I do think that performance is a little bit of an infrastructure, if you will, that connects people in different climbing groups, and some are, performing, trying like to do the hardest thing ever, and some just want to expand their horizons into a different discipline of climbing, and some just want to check out the new slab set at the gym on Tuesdays when they reset it, and want to perform it kind of in our own ways. And I do think that has a tendency to maybe help us organize how we structure our climbing training and our days, and maybe to some extent our crew. But oftentimes the best memories, of course, aren't necessarily about the performance itself, but about everything else that goes around it. And so for 2025, how do you create more of those ideal days?
I think I should backtrack a little bit and say that and you kind of touched on this as well in what you just said, that performance kind of gives us like a common ground to talk about. And it's such a complicated topic. And I'll reference like Hazel Finley's podcast with you as well, when she said that climbing can mean so many different things to so many different people, just depending on like the time in your life, like the era, you know?
Right.
Performance is incredibly important to me. Don't get me wrong. And I think, yeah, like you said, it's like an organizational structure for like who you hang around. And, you know, let's say I want like a lighter, you know, climbing day, I'll climb with my friends out. The performance isn't quite as important to them in that moment. If I want like a, you know, more focused, directed climbing day, then I'll invite my friends out that are like much more focused on performance.
Right.
But to answer your question, how to create those ideal days more often, I think once I decide to transition like away from this really performance-driven mindset, because that's where I'm at right now, I'm going to be like really excited to spend a long time outdoors with friends. But right now, I just happen to be very like focused on optimizing my performance, which I think comes with some costs, you know, like it feels like a little bit more selfish, and it feels like I want to climb when I can climb and I want to do like what I want to do on a board, or like I just don't want to be as like social and like following people around the gym and stuff like that. I want to be very directed. Like I wanted to get to the board like after my warm up.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting. I can see more clearly than I've ever seen though, like the cost that like high performance has on my like social life and also a little bit my mental health. You know?
I feel you. I mean, that's kind of where the waters that I've been, you know, swimming around in for the better part of the past year has been super performance focused. And I've gotten so much joy out of it. I will say, like, there's more pressure that comes with having ambitious performance goals, but there's like a higher level of joy that can be attained, at least in my experience, from it as well. Just when you're driven to do something, whatever that thing is, it could be in your professional career or learning a new instrument, or, you know, that just like that stoke and that drive to achieve the next thing can bring a ton of joy. But it does carry, you know, a little bit of a darker underbelly of maybe some anxiety, some pressure, some stress, or some depression if maybe you don't feel like you're achieving it or you don't achieve it. And some of those things I wrestled with at the end of last season when I didn't quite do the thing. But there is something about being driven, I think, to perform that's really fun for those who are drawn to that. And a lot of pros are, and that's why they're professionals, because they're able to just like continue to push themselves and power through setbacks and come back even stronger. And it's oftentimes some of the conversations that I have on this show. But for real people, where we're not necessarily trying to push the next grade in the sport, but just the next grade for ourselves or the next thing for ourselves, it can be, you know, a little bit of a double-edged sword. So it sounds like that's kind of what you're experiencing. And I'm coming off of just doing the thing. And so now I'm trying to figure out like, oh, what's going to be the next thing? And do I even want to jump into the next thing? And I feel like maybe I'm going to climb like 5-point fun for a while, reset, and then maybe get like driven and stoked again.
Yeah, I was going to ask. So when did you climb that 530? It was like only a month ago, right?
Yeah, exactly. Really recently.
Yeah.
I mean, it still feels recent, but like at the same time, it also feels like a million years ago. You know, I don't know. Yeah. It's a weird thing.
Yeah. We don't let ourselves like soak it in nearly long enough. Don't do it.
For sure.
But so are you like back into hard training? Are you taking a little bit of a break?
I'm still psyched because I feel like, because I sent it earlier in the season than I thought I would, I'm kind of peaking on my fitness. And so I'm not like taking on the next hardest thing, because I don't think I'm mentally prepared to be like, okay, what's the next harder route than the one I just did? I'm trying to figure out what that will be, because I do like setting like a big goal for maybe what's 2025's goal going to be. And then I can structure some training and also some conversations for the show around it. But at least right now, I'm trying to ride the wave of fitness and put down some really cool routes that I haven't had time to focus on because I was like pretty singularly obsessed on this one thing for the better part of a year. So yeah, just trying to ride like the wave of fitness and maybe do some like 1-day sends of some mid 12s or hard 12s and just get on some routes. But also like I'm heading out to the desert in just a bit here to do some like off width invert crack climbing with Tom Randall, which is going to be humbling as fuck.
Oh,
and
sick.
so yeah, I don't know. I think I'm just going to try and have fun basically.
Yeah, that sounds great.
It sounds great, but I don't know if it will be great. We'll see.
I've tried, like, I can probably count on one hand the amount of off width I've done in my climbing career. It's always super fun. But also like the worst experience of my life.
I was gonna say, like, I don't even think fun should be the word to describe off width. It feels very unfun.
Usually I'm like trying it with other people. I mean, usually you're trying it with other people, right?
Right.
And so it's just hilarious. It's just like super funny to watch. And usually like there's a lot of laughter happening because the amount of like grunting and try hard that you're doing to move up like 4 inches is so comical to me.
Totally.
It's hilarious to me. You're like trying the hardest you've ever tried in your life to move up like.
Oh my
so
God.
funny.
I'm just like so terrified I'm going to shit my pants. That's my biggest fear of this whole thing. I'm just going to poop myself.
It's such a ridiculous form of climbing. Ridiculously in a badass way, but it's so ridiculous.
Yeah. I've only done a little bit of off width as it was like a part of some multi-pitch that I did. And I really did not like it. I really did not enjoy it. And some people love it and gravitate towards that like blue collar, just kind of, you know, just going to war with, you know, some crack or whatever. And for me, there was not a whole lot of comfort in that or like excitement around it. So we'll see how it goes, but I'm excited to do that. And then I'm going to go try to climb some slab with Anna. And
nice.
I'm going to push myself out of my comfort zone a little bit and then come back to the steep pockety stuff at the red that is my comfort zone.
That's amazing.
And yeah, have you done that? I'm curious about that too, because it sounds like you're still putting a lot of your training focus on these specific projects that you have in the buttermilks. But how often do you then just like take a wild swing into something like totally different style or type of rock or type of climbing?
So I will switch between bouldering and sport climbing actually fairly frequently.
Oh, cool.
And that is mostly dependent on the season, basically. Essentially, when it's not buttermilk's bouldering season, I'll be sport climbing. And I think that's nice, just like one as a training tool, but then also just to like get my mind out of hard bouldering for a while, because it's a very particular like mental space that you have to be in to just like pull really hard moves, you know? And that can get really taxing. And I really do enjoy the flow about that sport climbing afford. So I'll do that fairly often. Like I spent a month in 10 sleep. It was my first time in 10 sleep this summer.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so cool. Have you been there?
Fun. No, I haven't been there, but I saw some of the stuff that you were sharing from it and it looked just like an awesome experience.
Oh yeah, I would highly recommend it. It's so cool. You should definitely go. Yeah, it's just like adult summer camp plus like really cool like limestone climbing.
Yeah.
Which is great. Yeah.
I'm curious, like which elite climbers, which pro climbers do you feel you're like most drawn to? Like who out there is your kind of spirit climber? Like Hannah is your you know spirit influencer. Who's your spirit climber and why? Like what inspires you?
Oh wow, this is a cool question. Ooh, I think Anna is a really big inspiration, but now I'm just getting into the job of naming friends.
Yeah,
I think the people that inspire me the most tend to be the people that are like the most real in terms of their like on the internet. Like I really like Hazel Finley is another hero of mine. I Alex Johnson, I would say, like those people, all of those people are like very open about their struggles with climbing, which and then there's like a lot of other like hard boulderers that they just like will post ascend and then like like say nothing about it. Ooh, Aiden Roberts. Eden Roberts, I love his mentality about things. I love how calm he is when he talks about everything. I love how like introspective he is and thoughtful he is with his explanations of things. He's obviously like one of the hardest boulders in the world. And he's very introspective, and the way that he like talks about grades and he talks about climbing is very interesting to me.
I feel like all the people you just named are, at least in my experience, and I've had conversations with all of them, like highly emotionally developed, like emotionally in touch, empathetic, like high EQ, emotional quotients, I think, more so than you didn't name anybody who's just out there because they're ripping the hardest moves, and obviously they're all hard climbers that you just named there, very strong climbers, but you seem to respond to them more because of their emotional intelligence than their sens, if you will.
Yeah, and I also really appreciate the climbers out there that are also clearly very good people. I think that are like trying to make a difference in the world. I think one person in particular is Kai Leitner. That comes to mind, that he's obviously an incredibly strong climber, but he does a lot of like activism work and social work and stuff like that. And yeah, those people inspire me as well. There's so many inspiring climbers.
Yeah, no doubt.
Hard question.
I love Kai. I had the best conversation with him earlier this year. He's just such a cool and wonderful human being. So yeah, all those people you just named are amazing. I appreciate you sharing that. It's interesting in the sport because we have the opportunity to meet and climb with a lot of these people. Even if you don't have a podcast or you're not, a big influencer, like you can just like go out to the crag at different seasons and interact with these people. And it is cool to see how, I don't know, real, I guess is the word maybe, of most of these climbers actually are and how accessible they are. And yeah, that's just another aspect of our sport that kind of makes it so special, is we're maybe small enough where that can still be the case. We haven't gotten so big where we've outgrown the roots of the sport, where it was like counterculture and, just like people getting together and having fun and like doing this weird thing.
That's something I've learned with like meeting so many of these like really high profile climbers at this point, is that they're all just normal people.
Right.
It's really fun, actually.
They have freaky fingers, but besides that, they're all just real people. Yeah,
they're all just real people, and they're, some of them can be really socially awkward. Some of them are really goofy and fun. It's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I want to talk about 2025 for a little bit here as we're wrapping up the year. And thank you for being so open about just the struggles and the ups and the downs that 2024 has brought for you. I think everybody who's listening or watching this right now can relate. There's just so much going on in this world and in our lives that, it's not going to be one note. You can't look back and just be like, it was a great year, or what, there's so many layers. It's a layer cake of emotions and triumphs and setbacks and all of that. So thank you for doing that. When you look at 2025 though, what are you most hyped on with regard to your training or your climbing or trips or community or professional stuff that you're working on? What's 2025 going to be for you?
I'm really excited about a lot of things. I'm definitely really excited to like get back to Bishop in terms of performance, like in a state that I feel like it's closer to where I want to be in terms of climbing. That's very exciting to me. I love Bishop so much, and I love the feeling of climbing well on the rock out there. And that is probably the main thing that is driving me in terms of my climbing performance right now.
Can I just ask, like, how do you measure that preparedness? Have you set yourself certain goals on the board, or finger metrics or fitness metrics? Like, how will you know you're prepared?
The vast majority of my climbing is done on the board. I think it has the benefit of being standardized, and so I can measure like how well I'm climbing anywhere. So I've set like pretty specific goals for myself in terms of like moonboard climbing and also kilterboard climbing. And once I hit those goals, I'll feel like I'm like relatively well prepared. That being said, a lot of the preparedness is gonna like happen on the rock itself.
Sure.
Especially like after several months away, you have to like relearn how to climb in an area. So probably going to be training in the gym for the next couple months, and then I'll be back in Bishop in February, and then I'll kind of start my like reacquaintance process, and then just fingers crossed I'll be fit enough to do the thing that I want to do. And then what else am I'm also just really psyched like about my personal life. It feels very scary right now because I'm kind of figuring out what my next steps are. It's like lots of open doors, and I just have to choose which ones I want to go down. I'm excited to see what happens next with Dr.Climb. I'm like starting to feel those creative juices seep back into my brain again, which is really fun. I'm like starting to come up with skits again, which is really cool. And yeah, I do want to take all of that in a very different direction. And I want to focus on like a big thing that I've been repeating in my head is like impact is better than reach, or impact over reach, you know?
Yeah.
So much of the internet is about reach and like, how many views does this get, you know? And I find like trying to actually make a positive impact on people is a lot more fulfilling. So I'm just trying to figure out like how I want to do that moving forward, basically. I don't really know quite yet, but I'm excited to see how that develops for sure.
I'm excited for all of that. What about trips or travel aside from Bishop in the kind of winter, spring? Do you have other, big trips in mind?
Yeah, one of my friends said that he's going to Waco and he invited me, and I've never been to Waco before, which is very surprising as a boulderer.
Yeah, I would have thought it's kind of like one of the meccas of bouldering for sure.
Yeah, totally. This summer was the first time I'd been to Squamish. I think I'm like so focused on Bishop. I mean, it's just such a like inspiring place for me that I just keep going back there, that I just don't go to these other places, even though I know they're freaking awesome.
Totally. I can relate to that like 100%. I'm as a predominantly a sport climber, a rock climber, I've got the Red River Gorge in my backyard. There's 3,000 routes or something like that there. And there's amazing climbing at the New River Gorge and at Rumney and at Ten Sleep and all over. And I do plan to hit a lot of those places actually in this coming year. That's one of the goals I'm setting for myself, is to push myself out of this protective little pocket. But I'm pretty stoked on the red. So it's like I haven't needed to leave,
I know. It's hard when it's like so easy too. I don't know if you have this experience, but I have this experience rather frequently where I'll go to one of these like world-class destination areas, and then I'll be like, this is great, but it's not Bishop.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, this is really cool, but it's not the buttermilks.
No doubt.
I think there's a lot that goes into that. Obviously, like it's a very like beautiful and spiritual place for me. I think there's like an ego component as well, where I've been climbing in Bishop and the buttermilks for like 13 years, and so I know how to climb there, and I can climb very well there. Whereas if I go to a new destination, I have to like relearn how to climb, and it's frustrating.
For sure. Different types of rock, different approaches. Yeah, I mean, it's trip mentality and like kind of home crag mentality are two very different things in terms of what the experience and what the goals should be. Trip goal planning and home crag goal planning are two very different things.
Totally. Yeah.
And then in terms of like professionals, so you said on Dr.Climb, you're starting to kind of feel those creative juices flowing. You're stepping away from physical therapy, although of course you retain all of that knowledge. And you work with climbers. Like, are you have coached? You are coaching. What's the status of that side of your climbing?
So I actually this is the origin of Dr.Climb. I didn't start it as like a skit, like climbing skit page. I actually started as a physical therapy and climbing coaching page. This was, oh gosh, like in 2021, maybe 2022, something like that. And it started as that, and I have coached climbers off and on for, I think, like 8 or 9 years. So I'm a fairly accomplished climbing coach. I'm also, a doctor of physical therapy. And more recently, I took a break from all that, like I said, because I just kind of want to reset and focus on what I want to do next. And within the past couple months, I've been like reflecting on how I want to like interact with the climbing community a little bit more. And I just remembered how much I love coaching and how much I miss coaching. And so, yeah, I just decided like literally within the past like week or so that I'm going to be opening up my coaching services again, which is so exciting. I freaking love working with climbers and I love coaching. And so I'm going to make that announcement sometime within the next month on my Instagram. But yeah, I'm going to be working with climbers again, coaching them. Like I said, I'm a doctor of physical therapy, so I'm really good with rehab as well as strength and conditioning. And my like main specialty / focus is getting people prepared for the outdoors because I would say I'm primarily an outdoor climber. So yeah, that's very exciting.
It's super exciting. And it's so interesting because I feel like one of the best things one can do if they're feeling like a little bit of stagnation in their own like world, whether it's professional or creative or physical, is to work with others. And like it just that stoke comes back because you start to see them get stoked and you tap into your knowledge and your experience. And in sharing that, it reinforces that. So I love that you're getting back into the coaching. You're obviously very experienced in the field as well, but to then be able to share that and what that might mean for you as you focus on doing some real hard things in 2025, that sounds great.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited for it because I've had a lot of time to think about there's like a ton of climbing coaches online that you can be with. And I think a lot of them are great. And I've had a lot of time to just like sit and think and reflect on what I can add to the coaching experience, which is a very particular thing. And I think that I will be particularly good at like mindset and fear-based coaching, as well as like just like focusing on my clients' experience as well as their performance, because obviously, as we've talked about a lot on this podcast, like experience is so important. And yeah, I'm super psyched. As you can tell, I'm very psyched.
Oh, totally. No, yeah. I mean, it's like you just like lit up just talking about that aspect of your skill set and in your career, working with people and coaching them and helping them to achieve their great moments that they can have outdoors on rock, like you shared with me, your ideal day out there. Oh, cool, man. I'm so excited for you. And
thanks.
This has just been wonderful. I mean, I really appreciate how open you've been, and that's a nice way for us to, I think, reflect on a year, is just like all the layers, all the colors is what kind of rolls up into looking back at a year and then getting excited for what's to come. Last question I've got for you on as we kind of wrap up this end of year episode here is the new year, and how will you ring in the new year? Are you a big New Year's Eve partier? What's the plan?
The plan right now is to be in Bishop.
Sick.
For New Year's. Yeah. The community there is amazing, and there will surely be like some really awesome New Year's party. So that's the plan right now. How about you?
Oh, I'm sure I'll be in bed before midnight, buddy. As we've established, I'm old balls over here, so I got to get my sleep, I'll eat a bowl of Raisin Bran and probably be in bed by the sundown.
That sounds, honestly, that's sounding like better and better as I get older.
You've only got a few more years, but then I bet I'll start raging again when I'm like in my 50s and 60s. I think I'm just like, I'm in a really tired time of life. The kids are young and it's like freaking exhausting. It's interesting. There's like, my wife showed me the other day this happiness curve, and it's not a curve, it's a trough in terms of like when people are happiest in their lives. And so like you're super happy as a kid, no cares in the world and all of this.
Yeah.
And it rises into your 20s and kind of peaks in the late 20s. And then it goes like off a cliff from like late 20s through your like late 40s. And then it goes back up, and then it doesn't stop. So like 50s, 60s, 70s, it goes higher than it's ever been. And it's because you figured out. So essentially like what my wife was saying is she's like, we're in like the hardest years right now because you're most stressed out about finance. You're most stressed out about career. You're going through existential crises. You've got kids who are like wonderful, but also like totally crimping your style. And, like that's just like, these are the head down years. And so the more you can like find moments of joy in these years. And for me, that's predominantly climbing and doing this show and talking to people like you, that'll help us get through so that, we can then just start going uphill. And so I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news that pretty soon you're going to be going off a cliff here.
I kind of feel like I've already gone off that cliff, but it's not so bad. That's the positive part. It's like, maybe I've gone off the cliff already and it's not so bad.
I mean, dude, I went off the cliff a decade ago and I just climbed my hardest thing ever. And I'm sitting in pajamas and I'm talking to Dr. Climb. Like, there's some good days that happen. All right. All right, that there wraps things up with Davis, Dr. Climb. So grateful that he was able to come in and just be totally open and not put on like some sort of act or try to steer this conversation in a way that I thought it was going to go. Davis, thank you for just being you, man. And no doubt in my mind that you have not climbed the hardest thing you're ever going to climb. I was just out in Moab climbing with Tom Randall. He and I are about the same age, mid-40s, and he just is climbing at his absolute hardest level right now himself, having just done some crazy stuff in Berlin and working on some insane stuff out in Moab. And he was saying that physically, climbers can continue to make gains and peak up into their early 50s. And this is based on a lot of data that he has. I'm going to be doing some podcasts on that, in fact, in the new year to talk a little bit more about kind of progressions in climbers and how we can continue to build through our 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond. So yeah, Davis, I know that you're going to be ripping holds off the moon board as well as hopefully not actually ripping holds off of blocks out in Bishop, but those projects are going down, my man. And thank you for opening up. You are a good person, and I really enjoyed that conversation. I hope you all who are listening right now enjoyed that conversation and that some of it maybe resonated with you wherever you're at in your climbing journey, whether you're on an up, or whether you're, kind of trudging through and struggling through some of those downs. We're all on this journey together. And that's my big takeaway here from this conversation, as well as this year as I reflect back. It's just the community. You guys are the best. You all have lifted me up so much to help me take on the hardest thing that I've ever climbed. And you supported me through that process that took way longer than I thought it would, to be honest. But I'm glad that it did, because I think it really helped to create an even deeper bond between myself and you all and all of the crew that I run into and cross paths with at the crag, and just this relationship that I have in general with this sport. I'm so, so grateful for the community. It is all about you and us here just on this journey together. And I hope you're enjoying your journey. Speaking of journeys, if you are a patron or Apple subscriber of the show, there's a bonus episode here where Davis talks me through my first potential trip here to Bishop. I'm looking to get out to Bishop early in 2025, and Davis is a Bishop aficionado, if you will. And so the bonus episode is totally about one's first trip to Bishop, like where to stay, what to eat, where to climb, how to climb and structure your days on certain days in certain areas to protect your skin or save enough gas to get out and try other things. He talks me through what it might take for me to try to highball some things because Bishop's got some high boulders. So yeah, pop over to Patreon or Apple and take a listen to that bonus episode. And if you are not a Patreon member, now's a great time to think about it. It's at the end of the year here, and I'm working really hard to make this show the best that I can. And your support through Patreon or Apple subscriptions is really what makes it happen. I'm hoping in 2025, this can be my only job. And how cool would that be? If it's not, that's okay too. I'm a weekend warrior and I'm hustling on all fronts, both on and off the rock. But if you've got a few bucks and you want to dip into some bonus content and pro clinics and just support me in the show, would love for you to swing over and check out Patreon. There's a link right there in your podcast player. And I will just go ahead and wrap this up right now because I'm rambling. And whenever I ramble, I recognize that I'm tired. And I'm tired because I'm jet lagged and also crack lagged, as I shared in the beginning. So I'll do a plug episode here in about a week or so to talk through this trip that I just had out west. Some crazy shit went down, including I beat Alex Honnold for the first time ever in a game of ping pong. That's probably the biggest takeaway. Forget about me doing like invert off with crack climbing with Tom Randall or barefoot slab with Anna Hazelnut. Let's talk about me for the first time beating Alex in a game of pong. So the record now, I actually beat him twice. The record is now 2 games for your podcast host and 27 wins for the biggest name in rock climbing. So I'm on my way back though. I've got him in my sights. I think if I take some time and really just work on my top spin, I think that's his weakness. Anyway, I digress. I'll do a plug episode all about that trip, including how I finally beat Alex Honnold in a game of ping pong. You can find that if you are a Patreon member as well. And by the way, there's a free tier, so you can just pop over to Patreon and sign up for free. But there's also other amazing stuff for those who pay. So thank you again for your support. Have a wonderful, wonderful holiday. If we don't talk or connect before then, you can always reach me through Instagram. I'd love to hear from you. Let me know how your training and your climbing are going. But if we don't, I hope you have a wonderful and safe and happy and joyful holiday, and that you manage to do a little bit of climbing in there somewhere. And then we will be back at it in the new year. Holy smokes, I've got a crazy slate of bangers just teed up and ready to go. Oh, I can't believe I've had to sit on these for a little bit because they're such good interviews. But those will be coming your way. So grateful for you. So grateful for the sponsors who have helped me to make this show alongside of your support. And also to the Honnold Foundation for keeping this podcast carbon neutral since day one, since I launched The Struggle. You can learn more about the Honnold Foundation over at honnoldfoundation.org. And again, it's the end of the year. If you're looking for a tax write-off or you just want to do some good in the world and feel really good about it, they are doing amazing, impactful work with local communities to bring clean energy, solar energy, and fund other solar-powered projects in these communities. It's just awesome. Pop over to Honnold Foundation to learn more about that. And anything else that I want to talk about? I want to thank the people who work for The Struggle and work with The Struggle. Glenn, who helps me to edit these episodes. Haley, who helps me to do all the social media stuff. Emily, who helps me to keep my head on straight and plan all of these things and make sure that I'm over-delivering for you as well as our sponsors. Thank you all for helping to make The Struggle. And to you, the listener, you are freaking rad. Let's make 2025 the best year yet. And I'll probably have one or two little casual episodes come out between now and 2025. So keep an eye out for those. And in the meantime, I love you. And I hope your training and your climbing are going great. And if you're struggling like me, well, at least the struggle and the eggnog make us stronger.